live! Yay! BLACCAST, episode 2, our racial identity and yours. Today, we're joined by two lovely people. If you'd like to introduce yourselves. Hold on. Wow, this is bad. I should have. Give me a sec. Let's do this. Sorry, guys. This is like my bad. Podcast foibles. Try again. Yeah, it's just not happening. Oh no. I think it's because Zoom is going through my headset and it's not recording through my headset. That sucks. It's not game breaking, but I'm probably gonna have to cut part of this podcast in the like actual audio thing. I just wish I had my headphones on me. My other headset. Speakers.
Should we all have headphones on, or are we good like without them?
Try again.
Do we need headphones, or are
No,
we good on?
you guys are good.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna try one more thing. We're probably gonna have to do like a second actual intro, but I'm sorry to know it's not going the right way. Actually, someone try speaking it one more time. Okay. So yeah, it's my issue on my end. Okay. So I'm just gonna have to bear with this and not have a headset on. Okay, yeah, but let's try one more time.
Okay. Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay. I think it's fine. I think it's not picking up on my microphone. I can hear you guys sort of. It's just weird stuff with technology. But yeah, this is BLACCAST episode 2, our racial identity and yours, dear viewer. Yeah, we're joined by our two lovely guests.
I'm Mika.
And I'm her sister Camille.
And of course, I'm Jazz, pronouns they, them. And I'm your host, or sort of co-host, not like the host this day. It's more Denzel this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can say that host, co-host. I'll be taking a more passive role this week, and really excited to have our amazing guests on today.
Yeah, with that, I guess we should start with just how we're doing with this. I guess we're living not in a new America because I feel like things are just sort of winding down after the election, but like things have changed a bit, and I guess we discussed that just for slight, like maybe 5 minutes. You want to spend like a couple minutes on that, Denzel?
Sounds good.
All right. How are we all feeling with the world right now?
It feels a little heavy. I mean, I think with the election results so far, at least it's like a little hopeful because I was thinking like the worst of the worst, but definitely still feel the same as I've been feeling. Yeah.
And Camille?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, how do I feel? Because I think right now I do agree with Mika. It does feel heavy, but it also feels really like the calm before the storm. You know, like what you were saying, Jazz, how everything kind of is winding down after the election, but we know that like change is here. And I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. So it's kind of like this, like, I don't know how to explain, just weird transitioning time.
And it's not like a very smooth transition. I mean, I haven't been really paying attention to Trump. I mean, I think like Denzel probably told me some stuff yesterday, but I really hasn't been like no one's. Maybe people haven't been reporting too much on it. I haven't seen it on my feed. It's been mostly happy, like, yeah, he's out of office, and it's like he's not out of office yet. But like I haven't been paying attention to what he's been saying. But Denzel, you want to speak on that a bit, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, there's two pieces to that. I mean, think to talk about the transition, yeah, basically unprecedented. Like Trump is trying to hold out. He like in his world, he still thinks he's like won. Or I don't actually think his team thinks they're won. They're just trying to like sow as much mistrust as possible. So it's weird, but Trump will be out of office like January 20th. Um, so that's weird. I'm like cautiously optimistic. It's not just because like, oh, Biden's in and he's gonna like end racism. Like, no, it's not that. But there's been some announcements from like Pfizer and some vaccine companies, some drug companies, that a early version of the vaccine like could be ready soon. And it's mainly gonna go to healthcare workers first, but um, yeah, like I'm cautiously optimistic. And Biden's also like appointing a coronavirus team, like with actual doctors on it. So those are like big things. Like I think people underestimate. Like I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe by this summer we'll start getting to like a closer sense of normal, which is earlier than I anticipated. So that's like a good thing.
The main reason I bring that up, not just because it's news and it's, the world we live in, but we have a new girl boss in the White House. Yay! No, but we're gonna be talking about Kamala Harris a bit. I just love the memes where it's just like, yeah, Kamala Harris, our new girl boss, and we're just like, yeah, she's a cop. Please stop. Yeah, that's my opinions on it. I'm not scared to share that. Even though she's gonna be my VP, and hopefully she doesn't send me to prison. Now let's get into the meat of our discussion today. Denzel, do you want to introduce all that?
Yeah, so I think for the dear viewer to know about the background of this podcast, Jazz and I, we have our late night Xbox chats as we do, and we talk a lot about identity and multiracial identity. And we were thinking, as we kind of continue the podcast, maybe the next episode be on that. And then like it just clicked in my head. I'm like, it'd be awesome to bring on. Like we should definitely bring on the Crib sisters. I'm sure they have some insight and perspective to share as Black women, Black multiracial women, and talk about this issue. So I'm really excited to have y'all on. I think today we really want to touch on, what is going deeper into like what is Blackness, but also like how does that intersect with other identities. So I think that's the goal of today. And I think I want to segue us into like an early discussion and talking about like childhood. Would love to hear about y'all's childhood, discuss that a bit, and as well as socialization. I come from a social background. I think Camille too. It was like a social major, so like we definitely like understand that. Like as folks are raised, like they do have their own self, but you're a product of your environment and how people interact around you and treat you. So I wanted to start off with that, and I think a early question to pose to each of you is kind of like, do you remember, was there like a concise moment when you first started to realize when you were a kid or even a teenager, something about your identity and something about kind of being someone who stands in multiple worlds? And anyone can take that super loaded question. Yeah. I was like, just unpack like your childhood, unpack your trauma. So easy, but like just throw that out there.
I think it's hard because I just made a realization this year that I suppressed so much. But my mom did share me an experience back when we lived in Cleveland. I was like 3 or 4 years old. Camille's a year and a half younger than me. And we were at the park, and our first language was actually Japanese. And so we grew up like really close with our mom. Our dad was like traveling a lot. So Japanese was our first language. So my mom was telling the story about us at the park. And I guess I was trying to play with this girl. And she was basically just like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, we're not gonna hang out because I don't know what's going on. And that's something I personally don't remember, but my mom shared me that story. And I'm like, whoa, this must have been like the first time of like feeling not belonging. And I definitely have found myself like suppressing those feelings. And this is like the first year where I'm trying to like head face on and be like, yo, what is going on? Why do I react in situations in these type of ways?
Yeah, really I like your questions, Enzo, as much as it's like oh my God, like my childhood, that's a lot to unpack. But I really like that because like Mika, I'm also realizing like just being more in inquisitive, is that the word? Of my triggers, like like investigating why do I feel a type of way when I don't know, someone makes an assumption about me, or or like why do I get so affected when someone says like oh, I don't know, or like when people, especially when people question my blackness, even or and when people question my Japaneseness, depending on where I am, like I get so pissed off, and I'm just like, why am I taking it so personal? And I think a lot of it is like like when we were growing up as kids, we were all our friends were Japanese because my mom was like the main person that raised us. So all our play dates, like all her friends were Japanese, so then our play dates were Japanese. And in school, like all our Japanese friends were in our classes, so we had our little Japanese gang. But the whole time, it was like me and Mika were always having to like prove. Oh, sorry, I got a little excited. Prove our that we're Japanese the whole time, and it like when we first moved to San Diego, which is where like we're a bunch of Japanese people, like I did not ever really question my Japanese or blackness. Like I was very comfortable with that, and then when I started, being socialized by my friends, it was kind of like, oh shit, like I don't look like my friends. I don't have straight hair. I don't have like I don't look Japanese. So, I'd find myself always getting to fights with my friends that I am Japanese, and like having to overcompensate my Japaneseness by like, for example, you could cut me off if I'm talking too much. I'm like rambling, but when we had um chopsticks for our lunch, and this girl named Arena, I remember her name, you could bleep it out if you want, but this girl, she was my frenemy in like, it was like kindergarten, or maybe like, no, second grade. She was like my frenemy, and we're eating lunch together, and she's like, why are you holding the chopsticks like that? Like, you're so American. Like, you're not Japanese because you don't know how to hold chopsticks correctly. And I was like, wow, like first of all, I didn't know I was holding chopsticks wrong, because it worked for me, but I guess I'm not holding it right. So then I spent the whole day after school, like practicing doing chopsticks correctly to the point where I was like perfecting it, like Mr. Miyagi, like catching it with flies. Like I was able to do, like hold it like that. And yeah. And then every time I had two sticks, I would just be like showing off that I'm know how to use chopsticks, And then when I was older, like after elementary school, and we went to middle school and high school, I was around more black, like all my friends are black or mixed with like black mixed with something else, but mainly black. And my friends weren't Japanese anymore. And I found myself again having to like, I didn't ever question my blackness, but then now I'm like, my friends are telling me, oh, you talk like a white girl, or like, oh, you're so naive, like you're not really black, like blah blah blah. And so then I found myself overcompensating in that way too, like by being like, this is my dad, or I don't know, or like I know Kwanzaa facts because our dad was like super into Kwanzaa. So I would be like, I'd be like, I know these facts about like black people, like you probably don't know. And I was just like really just aggressive with my identity. And so I think now I'm like, okay, all my triggers is like from like those times. And now I'm just kind of like trying to learn not to take things so personal, because it's like they don't know my life. And yeah.
Yeah, Camille, like that definitely it was your rant, but like that's the space we want. We want this to both kind of be a venting space and also a discussion space. So that was really helpful. And I want Jazz to talk as well, but just initial reacting, like I think this is something that Jazz and I talked a bit about in terms of like, I know Jazz will touch on this, is like wanting like having to like overperform or
Yep.
really trying to like overperform or overreact to either prove, you know, in your case, your blackness or your Japanese-ness, but you know, and sometimes in our cases, our blackness, like that is, it's this weird burden that's placed on us. And I feel like for me, it's like a moment that I have, and maybe y'all have had this, but it's like eventually it just clicked. I was like, man, fuck y'all. Like, I know who I am. Like, this is my identity, and I'm not letting anyone, especially you white people, define who I am and what my identity is. And like, I feel like that's such a liberating moment. But that's really helpful. And also even seeing like the contrast between you, Camille, and Mika. Like Mika's like, I was on the playground like just speaking Japanese, which sounds like super Japanese to me. And then Camille, you're like, yeah, all our friends are Japanese, but we still have to prove it. I'm like, man, y'all seem really Japanese. I've heard y'all speak Japanese too before. I was like, you seem like you've got like both cultures, but that's very frustrating. Jazz, definitely want to hear what you have to say and
So I think my association or my like childhood is very similar to Camille's. Where well, not Japanese. I'll say this to the dear viewer or listener. I am so I identify as Black and Filipino. Um, there's a lot more to that to my dad's lineage, and definitely more to that to my mom's lineage. But I pretty much claim Black and Filipino because it's a lot easier to talk about. I used to hate doing this when I was a kid. Someone asked me, "What are you?" And because I mean, people look at me now. I think they think I'm pretty much Black now. But I pretty much grew up as like an Asian American or as a kid that looked brown and Asian. That's what I would say. Um, but to my point about my childhood, I wanted to bring up was I grew up in a very like multi-ethnic and multiracial like group, but also it was very highly like at home it was very multi-ethnic. Like I had like my family is not just Black and Filipino. We have a whole bunch of people at home, and my friends, my family friends, like my uncles that aren't my uncles and my aunties that are not my aunties. Like they're all different backgrounds. But at school, that's where I got. That's where I learned like where I pretty much found out that I was like Black or just different. Um, I went to a mostly Chinese run daycare. Everybody spoke Cantonese. Everybody was learning Mandarin, and if you were speaking English, it was you. So there was like the side of the preschool that was like the non-Chinese kids, and they're actually the minority. It was hilarious. And then there was the like just the other Chinese kids, and I had to either pick. I mean, I liked hanging out with both sides. I mean, I was sort of in a weird thing because like I think they could tell I was Asian because probably because they saw my mom, but they didn't see me as fully Asian. And it got to a point where I like legit learned Cantonese and I learned Mandarin just so I could speak to them and like communicate properly. And but they would keep doing this thing where they push me out because I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing this right. I don't have this proper. You didn't pronounce or you didn't enunciate that properly or you didn't use a tone properly in that word. And it's just like it was just a whole bunch of gatekeeping. And then I was just I had one person, a couple of daycare caretakers to just tell me it's like yeah it's because you're Black. Like they actually just put it down. Like there's a couple who were just like oh I don't know the kids are funny, and but then like there was like the one who was very good to me. She was she's someone that's still in my life, but she basically was just like yeah you're brown. Like they think you're weird. Like they don't like you. It doesn't matter how you talk. They're gonna try to. And I was bullied a lot just for being different and trying to like engage in their space. But there's just this huge barrier. That's pretty much how I learned I was Black. And then I started going to like a mostly Black private school. So that was a huge switch for me. I went to a Black private school, like a Black Catholic private school. It's like mostly Black, partly Latinx, and then I think there's like one white kid, honestly. The and it was very weird to me because that's where I had to like sort of figure out my Blackness because I see my sister didn't my sister she's also um She's also, yeah, of course she's black and Filipino, but she identifies, I think, more with the black side of, like, she could fit better into blackness than I could, because I grew up, you know, playing with, like, you know, Chinese kids playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and like watching anime, and like just whatever the Chinese kids were into at the time. Like, I was just something I was doing, and it kind of like it kind of was a weird barrier. Another barrier to cross was like, or like, you know, breakthrough was just being around more black kids, and I was just like, I don't know my, like, black identity, and this is like when I was 5 to like 8, and probably until like middle school did I actually try to get it down or try to figure out like what that was about. I still, I mean, I'm not gonna say I've still struggled with it. I think I know where I am now, but that's how my early years formed. Basically, it was just like, first I got to figure out if I was Asian, and then I figured out if I was black, and then either, I think at one point I just sort of like got rid of both, and I was like, nope, I'm just myself, and now I'm just like, no, I'm all those things, and it's great, but it was a really big struggle. Growing up in Oakland around Chinese and black people was just super confusing, especially for the early 2000s. That's what I would say about that. Unless anybody has any questions about that.
Well, firstly, thank you for sharing your experience, Jazz. I feel like that's always important to bring into the space. And thank you to all of y'all, because I know as some of these memories, we might laugh about them, but at the time they might have been deeply traumatic. So I just want to bring that into the conversation, and sharing that perspective. Also, y'all are out here like, yeah, I was a kid speaking like Cantonese, Mandarin, Japanese, like speaking all these languages. You know, I wasn't doing shit when I was a kid. I was eating McDonald's and going home and watching Yu-Gi-Oh. But yeah, just bringing that in. But I don't know if there's any reaction to what Jazz is saying.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Jazz, like, because you said you and your sister are different, like, I guess I forgot what the word is. It's like this fancy word about how you hold your, like, what identity you wear. So like your sister kind of wore like her black side more and like kind of wore that more comfortably. And for you, it was kind of like
Well,
neither, low key.
so
So, oh
it
yeah.
was a lot easier for me to be the Asian kid than it was for me to be the black kid growing up. Like, if you see a picture of me, like, I can send you a picture of me when I was a kid. Or you can look at my Instagram. Like, I looked like a little, like, brown boy of ambiguous ethnic and racial identity. Like, it's just, I don't look I don't think I looked like a black child. Like, whatever that means, you know, it's like what we describe that as. Like, no one would say that's a black kid unless you saw my dad holding me. He going, hey, I love my son. Like, you know, it's just like, that just wasn't like, so it was easier for me to like just be like, yeah, I'm the Asian kid, like, especially when I was in the black private school. I forgot to bring that up. So I went from private school from like until I was 8. Then I went to a almost all Chinese like elementary school from like 3rd grade to 5th grade. So then it just like fucked my head. I was just like, I'm just going back and forth, and it sucks. And then, yeah, then Brewer. Then so when we say Brewer was mostly, I feel like we were mostly. I feel like everybody was trying to be black at in middle school. Like, even if you were Asian, I feel like
You mean all ethnic groups? Yeah, I mean, I think the tendency was towards, this is a larger question, but like black slash hip hop, which is like a broad like culture, like that was generally the trend in middle school.
So yeah, I mean, my point was just that I was just confused to shit as to, like, you know, who should I identify more with, and like where do I fit in? Um, it's because, like, you know, my sister, I guess she just had an easier time with it. I guess she has more black, like, phenotypical trait. No, she looks more black. Um, so she could just do it better than I could. And I think she grew up differently. So, like, I think she grew up mostly around black people, so she didn't really have the Asian upbringing that I have. So we're like, we're both like, you know, we're both multiracial people, but um we have different experiences that shape like how well we could fit into those sort of identities. Um, yeah.
Jazz, it's funny just because now you're saying this, and I'm thinking about that picture Izzy took, where I was like, Izzy, you look like Kamala Harris here. It's just like really funny. Like,
Yeah. I remember
thinking
that.
about that. Like,
She really
but
did.
she really like it. I mean, she kind of does, but
Yeah.
like that's just so y'all have an idea of what his
Also,
feelings
Camille,
are.
hopefully I just ranted. Hopefully I just answered your question, maybe.
Now I got because at first I was gonna ask like, oh, maybe like maybe your sister was closer to your mom or dad, and then you were closer with, and that kind of. But then I feel like also it's like how y'all look, like kind of people put that kind of like kind of
Oh
told
shit,
y'all how
Izzy's
to
in the chat.
express.
My sister's in the chat, like she's listening. Oh god, we're talking about you, Izzy. That's funny. I will say that we do. So we did have different. We have the same moms, different dads. I'd say her side, like who she grew up with was just more black, and then I. It's hard because like my father is black. My mom's Filipino, right? And I wasn't. I don't think I was very close enough to my mom to say that I grew up like sometimes I actually feel like I'm not like fully Filipino. Like I mean like I started hanging out with my Filipino family a little more later down the line, but honestly it's confusing because like I grew up basically Chinese. Like because I was at the daycare for so long, and then I was at elementary school for so long, and just hang out with the same people. A lot of those people transferred to the same school, and then we just like and it was just a lot easier to like I felt like I was closer to them despite me not literally being of that heritage at all. Like I'm not Chinese. Like no part of me is Chinese, but I just grew up around them. Um, and I didn't know what a Filipino person was supposed to be like. Actually, that's a big point. I didn't really know what a Filipino person was to be like growing up because I mostly we didn't really interact with that side of the family until like I'd say until everybody started started immigrating over here. Um, so I just felt more Asian American, but like just not Filipino American, I guess. And then I was trying to discover my blackness at the same time, and it was a lot pretty confusing. But basically, yeah, definitely how we looked and who we grew up around definitely shaped what our identities were. I felt like honestly, I feel like I was pushed into the Asian American role like identity more than the black early in life.
Did you have conversations around like race with your parents? I'm like curious if
I'm trying to think because like I mean I think we definitely talk about it, but like I don't talk about like how confusing it is or how weird it is. It's just that's just who we are. But like um, I can say this about my dad. He grew up somewhat similar to me. He's not fully black. He's he's mixed. I would say that, but like outwardly, I think just like me, since we both don't have hair anymore, I think most people just peg us as black. Just two black guys. The but my dad, when he was growing up, he had very wavy hair, just like mine. Like it just when it grows out, it's just wavy. He had to treat his hair to make it look froey and make it look more black, or he would just try to hide it. But that gave him a lot of like it wasn't normal to look like that back in the day when he was growing up. So it was just like if if he didn't look black enough, he was getting bullied, or he got into a lot of fights, or had to wear a hat a lot or something. Um, so that's sort of his experience. He was pretty much ostracized until he went bald, like, which is terrifying. That's actually kind of bad to think about. My mother, I when I talked to her about it, it seems like she grew up as a like in the Philippines as like a I don't know, pretty typical kind of middle class Filipino girl. Um, I don't. I think when we talk about color, I think she touches on a bit about like colorism, but I don't know. I mean I know a bit about colorism in the Philippines, but like I don't think she really cares too much about it. She's on the lighter side, I would say, but she doesn't really talk too much about like how poorly they like darker skinned Filipinos are treated in the culture. But in relation to my skin color, honestly, actually a positive note about me being brought up. It's like my parents just always tell me, it's like, yep, you're beautiful, your skin's beautiful, you're fine. Like they never said anything poorly, but it's like, oh, you're gonna get too dark, or you're too pale. I think they actually do say a lot of things about me looking too pale sometimes, because their experience with me was I was in the swim team and I was very, very brown. So like they think it's weird that I'm getting pale and paler because I'm just staying in the house more. I'm sorry, but like there's good enforcement with colorism. I feel like, or not with colorism, but just like there's no colorism. Like people in my family are chill.
This is, I don't know if y'all want to continue the conversation, but I feel like this is a really good segue actually into like dating and fetishization. And we could start with Jazz, because I have here like Jazz's experience with their good hair. I don't know if anyone from high school is listening, Jazz with when they used to have their pompadour. But anyways, like just to give more context, like I've known Jazz for a long time, y'all. We joke about this, like fucking half our lives we've known each other. And Jazz like used to have like kind of feathery hair, like their hair was like different, and like ethnically ambiguous, quote unquote. But like, yeah, Jazz, I want you to, if you would like to like kind of reflect on just in general, like your experience in general dating, to the extent that you feel comfortable, but also kind of sharing some of your hair experiences, and then would love to open that up and hear Mika and reflect on that as well.
Yeah, we'll move into some stuff about hair. It's funny because I'm bald now. There was a time where that Denzel brought it up where I did have a pompadour. Shut up, Izzy. She's laughing at me in the chat. Where I did have a pompadour, and I was very proud of it. Made me very popular senior year of high school. I didn't really fully understand why everybody was so obsessed with it. I know people called me Miguel a lot, and that got confusing, but I kind of owned up to it. I was like, yeah, you know what, fine. It's getting me the attention, and people are giving me good looks. I'm not used to it. Like honestly, I wasn't used to it. People thinking I look good. Like honestly, think about that. Like my entire life, I'm just like people thought I was like this weird freak, and then I got this pompadour haircut, and then like everyone thinks I look cool, and I was just like, you guys like gave me shit about my hair, and like people would say stuff about my hair. They'd be like, yeah, like you're black, but then you have this like weird white people hair. I'm just like, this feels bad, but like, the I was gonna make a joke about my hair actually. I remember my mom, like, cause I used to go out a lot. I used to be really bold in senior year of high school because of like the popularity and stuff like that. I used to what was it? My mom would say, "Hey, I'm gonna cut your hair off at night. That's your power." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, you're like Samson. If you guys read the Bible, so you're like Samson. I'm gonna cut your hair off in the middle of the night." I was like, "No!" And I used to have like nightmares of like going bald, which now came to fruition. The um thing with hair and me, Denzel, is I think my dad. So my dad's a hairstylist actually, or he was. So yep, free haircuts all the time. But he said he always says like, "Yep, you're my favorite client, Jazz, because your hair is just so nice." And I didn't really think about that too much. I mean, like I think I appreciated that he loved my hair, but I was just like, why does he love my hair? And it's like because it's not like black people hair, so he's sort of like it's easier to treat, and it's hard. It's like not as hard as he had for him to work with it. Um, but definitely, I think I tried to pride myself on my hair a lot. I mean, I liked it as much as I had, like for as long as I had it. Um, but yeah, definitely in high school, people were just like petting my head a lot. They're just like, oh, I'd say a lot of black women were petting my head. They're just like, yeah, Jazz, you got that good hair. Like they would say it, and I was like, this is weird. This is very weird. Just like getting pet, and then just like I just felt like they're gonna take it or something or try to run off with it. I was like, I don't know what's up with that. Um, that was the good hair sort of segment. Unless you have any more questions about that, Denzel. Did you want to go off this like another point about fetishization? Because I have some funny jokes about that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to touch on that segment, and then I think you actually you might have your joke, but I think you had some historical context around fetishization that I think
Of black
we were
people.
about last night. Yeah, specifically of black people. Yeah, you had
Okay,
like some historical
so
framing that I hadn't quite heard of.
I'll bring that historical context in, and then I'll do my funny joke, which is less funny after I give the historical context. So fetishization of black people, it didn't start like, it wasn't a recent thing. It didn't start in the 90s or the 80s or 70s. Like it goes all the way back to black enslavement, and I'm not talking just about like white slave owning men, like, raping their, like, raping their black enslaved women. It was it was a lot of, like, I think we talked about it last week or like before this session. um there was this weird thing about just being entranced by black bodies back in the day, and it happened from the abolitionist side and the slave owning side. Like, there's erotica on both, like literal written erotica in journals written from both slave owners and abolitionists. There's, like, you can look this stuff up. It's very disturbing. It's like black like, slave owning women just like fetishizing black men's bodies, just being like, oh yeah, they're like, I don't know, Achilles, like bronze Achilles. They're like beautiful, blah blah blah. And then you would see sort of the similar things. Um, and go actually, I want to go back to that point because they would also fetishize like mixed or like, half white, or just like, yeah, mixed slaves as well. They were really entranced by that. So that, fetishization of mixed black bodies is also historical, like from enslavement. And then but you also had the abolitionists saying similar things, like, to get people on their side. They're just like, oh yeah, I really want, like, it's like, you gotta save the black bodies because they're beautiful and we should love them and blah blah blah. And I was just like, this is, I guess it helped, but it's also very creepy, and it's not the narratives that we're taught in high school, of course. But I feel like we should know a little bit about that and we should own up to it, because that's where this all comes from. That's why I'm getting pet in the head sometimes, and that's also why this is the joke I was gonna say. When I was in, I think this is the first time I was this. This is the earliest memory of me like hanging out with white people ever. I went to a park, and there's some white kids. There's a bunch of white girls. They all looked at me and they started chasing me, and I was like, "What is happening?" And they're all just like they all cornered me, and they're all like had their lips puckered and they're trying to kiss me. I was like, I don't want this shit. Get away from me. What is that? And then like I think one pinned me down but didn't kiss me, but I was just like, please get off me. Like I was just like, I was so weirded out by it, and I was just like, I think at one point someone said, "Get the brown boy," and I was just like, what is happening? Like, why is this happening? Um so I don't know if I don't have the psychological or neurological training to tell if, the white like fetishization, like from slave owners, got passed down to these kids through their genes, because I know trauma gets passed down, but I don't know if I can say if fetishization and, like, the horny gets passed down too. The everybody's laughing. The I have no idea, but it feels like it though, because that happened a lot. That was my earliest memory of like fetishization and exposure to white people. And so there some I don't know how we're gonna structure the rest of this.
Yeah, so oh yeah, I was gonna say you could go ahead, Camille, if you had something, if you had a reaction, natural reaction to that.
Uh, well, I was just thinking about like just like being hypersexualized in the dating world, like kind of like uh in modern times, and like to like how it's kind of I guess being multiracial, like there was like that Blasian phase that kind of comes in and out. Like people love Blasians, people hate Blasians. Like I don't know. It's like, but there was like a there was like a hypersexualization of like Blasian women. And I feel like in high school it was really like interesting because I would just well, in high school I was very insecure, because my body's changing and also just everything. And so you start getting like this attention from these guys, and then they'll be like, oh, and she's Blasian, like she's black and Asian. And so, like that's like like best of both worlds, like, you know, they'll start saying that and like making me feel special because I'm Blasian, and like they want to be with me because I'm Blasian. And it's like when I'm in high school, it's like it's creepy, like it kind of made me uncomfortable, but it also made me feel wanted in the same time, because also like, you know, I was also in high school, I was going through a weird time when people were like, oh, you're this white girl, like you're not black, like even though I hung out, like it's like I hung out with the black kids, but I was never really accepted completely, but I felt more accepted within the black folks than the Asian folks in high school. So it was just like this weird thing. And so then like when guys started, you know, praising me for being Blasian, I kind of felt like finally I felt accepted, like because of my identity. But then I'm not realizing, or like not really digging deeper and being like, oh, it's not okay, because it's like they have their own perception of what Blasian means, and they have these expectations and all that. And yeah, you want to add anything?
I think the whole like expectation is such an important part. The phrase "ni puta ni santa" is something I always think about, which means like not a slut, not a saint, and that's something I realized I still struggled with. Like even this past week, I've seen, I don't know why this is like in a lot of like women's heads right now, but like having like the sex talk with your parents, and whether you had it or not, like really shapes how you view your own sexuality. And so I think like for me, like I've honestly like been like felt hypersexualized since I was like a kid. And so like I always was trying to like suppress, like just always trying to suppress those feelings. Um, and so I think like even now as an adult, I'm always so overly cognizant of how I'm being viewed, especially by men. And I like find myself like just like I'm having this joke now that I'm basically like a prude, and I'm like kind of leaning towards like being like seen more like non-sexual, just because I've had this like notion of being like hypersexualized or having expectations of being like a sexual person, but then also having like notions of like when they know like I'm half Asian, it's just like, oh, I have expectations that you're gonna be like submissive and quiet and this, but then you're black, so it's like I want that aggression and like that wildness. And like I hear those comments all the time from a lot of men. So like even going back with like the hair comment, like I overthink how I should wear my hair, because when I have my hair curly, like there's been times where like guys I've dated have been like, ooh, I love like your curly, like wild look. And like I'm just like, huh? Like that's just that does not feel like me. So like for me, it's like I like straighten my hair a lot just because it just like makes me feel like I could just like blend in and like hide more. But yeah, I don't know. It's like a weird dynamic. Like I still struggle with it to this day.
Oh, you just like brought out like so much suppression when you said, oh, like we're so hypersexualized as kids. And it's like, whoa, like that just opened up so many memories of like really creepy, typically creepy older men, like being like, oh, your daughters are so beautiful, like mixed kids are so beautiful, and like blah blah blah, like you're gonna be so beautiful when you turn 18. Like those comments, like, you know, happened a lot when we were kids. And I think for me it kind of was switched. Like I suppressed the feeling of feeling uncomfortable by overcompensating being comfortable with being hypersexualized, and then just trying to fit that role, even though it was like also really not traumatic, or I guess yeah, traumatic, because it's like I feel not true to myself because I'm just trying to how do you explain? It's just whoa, like I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like suppressed, like not trying to hide being hypersexualized by being hypersexual, if that makes sense. Not saying that I mean, I guess I was kind of out here compared to Mika, but like, you know, we kind of like dealt with it in different ways. Yeah, and I think as Black women too, like as Black women, like it's just like so much violence in that, like sexual violence, you know? And yeah, and I feel like going as yeah, I'm about to go on another tangent. So, but yes.
There's a lot to unpack. Like in the words of Oxy, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing like a lot of emergent themes there. I mean, that's a lot. And Camille, going to what you were saying, like I've definitely seen that myself, either in family saying it or just in general, Black folks or people in general saying like, oh, look, this mixed child is so beautiful. Like definitely holding up a mixed child for one, just in terms of like beauty, like from having a certain type of curly hair or like light eyes. But then also, yeah, it gets a little weird in terms of like, oh, they'll be like so beautiful when they grow up or something like that. I've heard that. I think also it's interesting. Like, I feel like there's this almost, I would say it's sort of American, like desire. I remember there's like a Time magazine cover or something of like, this is what the average child will look like by 2040. And it's like, kind of like someone with like pretty, like caramel skin, basically like light brown skin and curly hair. There's a lot of things with that because like, for one, like people actually think like interracial relationships and marriage are much more common than they are. They're not actually very common. Fun fact, like it's not a super common thing, so that's probably not going to happen. But like, yeah, it's so interesting how people treat that. And then Camille, what you were saying, I'm trying to phrase like, it seems like you and Mika, like on Mika's end, she was kind of trying to be more prude to react to this hypersexualization, go away from it. And then it sounds, I think the words you're looking for, but I'm not sure, we're like leaning in, like you're kind of like leaning in, you're like, just, if this is how I'm going to be perceived. I'm not sure. I don't want to like put words in your mouth, but like, it seems like you had a dichotomous response to how folks were kind of treating you or reading you. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, outside the hypersexualization part, it was kind of going back to what Jazz was saying about, um, like, uh, of how, of how people perceive us, and then trying to decide how we identify, or trying to explore our own identity without it being tainted by other people's perceptions. And I think it kind of brought me back to also like when I was like kid, I don't know, maybe like 8 years old, maybe at a fast food drive-through with my mom. And it was after school. And I was just like, I do not want to be Japanese. Like, I wish I was just Black, because because when we're mixed, like, from my experience, it's wherever I go, my Blackness is in the forefront, like in America at least, and I was just kind of like, I'm just, you know, what's the word? Yeah, I think I felt more closer with my Blackness, even when I was around all these Japanese kids. Like, I was, identify as Black. And then even when I was around other Black folks, like, I still felt more Black than anything else. And I feel like the Black community, we do have our like gatekeeping, and I think that's also just out of survival too, like, of being like, oh, you're not Black because, Black people is like this. Like, it's kind of like that conditioning. And then also, like, I feel like with Black Americans, like, I feel like, not to speak for all of us, but in my opinion, like, we are more prone to, like, I feel like most Black Americans had felt like they need to had to prove their Blackness in some way, or like felt not Black enough sometime. And so what I'm trying to get here is like the so yeah, at the end of the day, like, I feel like I felt more Black, and I felt more accepted within the Black community, despite like the outliers of calling me like not Black enough. And so
I can help
can't
you.
remember
Like,
what I was trying
I
to
mean,
say.
it's like 400 years of like our culture constantly being stolen. Even to this day, there's no like every type of thing that like Black people in America want to claim that's ours always gets stolen. And so I think there's just such a unique experience of being Black American. And yeah, I don't know. This might be like not PC, but like this year, I'm like, I can, if I ever like get married, like I feel like I can only be with someone who is Black American, just because that experience is so unique, and there's really no other culture like this where our culture's constantly being taken, but like we're so proud of where we're from, even if we don't know exactly what that looks like. We inside know like what that is and what that looks like for us. And so yeah, I think it's unique to like have to be so proud to be Black, even though there's nothing really tangible of what it is to be Black. And so I think it's so interesting that like for every Black person in America, there has been an experience where we're constantly like, am I Black enough? Like white people have to find what Blackness is, or they try to. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, nah, like there's really no tangible thing of what Blackness is. And I think that's something that we just need to like hold on to and appreciate the diversity within being like Black in America, regardless of like our culture, again, just like constantly being taken away.
Yeah, I agree. And like being Black is not sorry, Denzel, I keep cutting you off. Being Black is not like just linear. It's just branches out, like, okay, like I grew up in this neighborhood, but and my mom made this, you know, all this stuff, and it's like a big tree. But I think it's also untouchable from the colonizers, because as much as they try to steal our like flavor, it's just not, it doesn't have that je ne sais quoi or whatever it's called.
I literally was gonna say the je ne sais quoi.
Yes, right. I don't know what I just said. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's beautiful about being Black, and you know, even as a mixed person, like, you know, because we have that, it's not tangible, but it's there. It's not made up. It's like a thing. But yeah, Denzel, what were you?
I mean, I was gonna say, that's you both brought up some great points, and that's something me and Denzel were talking about. It's like, yeah, Blackness is just whatever Black people are doing. It's like not, it's not a specific thing. It's not like there's not like a whole bunch of boxes you got to really check, or like there's an outline for it. But Denzel, did you want to like go into gatekeeping, I guess, with that?
Yeah, I think this relates to gatekeeping, but I actually had a reaction
Yeah, go ahead.
oh wait, and a fetishization thing just came to mind in a weird way, but like, and a reaction to what Camille was saying. Just in my own experience, Camille and Mika were saying, like, it's so interesting because I think like a lot of Americans are really bad at history, right? Like they don't understand things, but like there's so many things, like to me, and Obama said this, and I think I actually kind of agree with him, like Black culture is American culture, because like so much of like United States, like American culture is like what Black people have done. Black people have been at the leading forefront of like, you know, abolition, anti-police violence, feminism, like all of these things, like a lot of it is due to like Black activists like at the forefront trying to push, like making the country better for anyone who is like downtrodden. So there's that. But also in terms of pop culture, like pop culture is us. Like the word cool, like from my understanding, like cool is like comes from like jazz spaces. It's just like, but like someone could say cool. You don't like, oh yeah, cool, that's a Black person term. It's just like a common like American thing. But like, y'all, that came from like Black people made it up. Like all these things, they kind of just get assimilated to American culture. But it's like, no, that's like us. Like we define the culture. And like honestly, in the era of globalization, like Black culture is the trendsetter. Like and this is like a separate episode, but like, you know, in K-pop, like whenever I see K-pop, I'm like, it's so much like it's pulled from hip hop or like from Black culture. And I think in general, if you look in a lot of pop music, even if the language is different, like the aesthetic, like how much can you just trace to like an Aaliyah music video from the 90s? Like it's like Aaliyah was like, I think huge for the culture in general. So there's that, like how Blackness impacts culture. And also I just had like a funny fetishization thing. I remember we were at like, I don't know if it was fetishization, but like we were at this like I was at this day-long retreat at Oxy, just kind of talking, like unpacking like the history of like slavery and impacts on the modern day. And Professor Fort was there, and he talked about how like a lot of Ivy Leagues, actually their first employees were slaves. And like, it was really interesting. But we got into this discussion, and I think we were talking about like what experiences had we had with discrimination or seeing it. And like, there's this one girl, I don't remember her name, but like she was at Oxy, and she was just like, yeah, you know, like when I was in high school, you know, my boyfriend was Black. And like, she like said that, and then like totally like looked at me, like just kind of like looked at us like, Oh, this is like
Ah,
a little weird. It's like, well,
ah.
we just face so much like discrimination and like we got these stares and I'm like not to discount like I'm sure like interracial couples have that, but it was just like the way that she kind of like made eye contact with me. I was like, this is weird. So that's what I want to touch on. But yes, Jazz, we should talk about gatekeeping, the necessity of it. I think also the gender and racial dynamics around Blackness. I know something that we had talked, all three of us had touched on a prior call was like, what's the dynamic between the election of like Obama versus Kamala Harris? Like there's kind of like a gender racial dynamic there in terms of like who is accepted into Blackness and how hard it might be for Kamala Harris to like be accepted into Blackness, maybe a bit less so than Obama, even though. But there's like I'm kind of throwing it out there just to pose it up. But I don't know if you got some thoughts, Jazz.
I wanted to say something about that because Denzel, I don't. So my experience with Obama back in the day, that was like when he was starting to run. I think that was like 2007 when like you started seeing stuff in the magazines. It's like, "Hello, black guy, run for president." We're like, "Yeah." And I don't. I think I remember my dad just going like, he ain't gonna win that black so and so." Like he was joking about it, but I don't think he was like serious about it. It's like they ain't gonna elect a black man. Um, but I don't. I remember Trevor Noah had a bit about it. If everybody, I mean, I'm not a big Trevor Noah fan. Also, my camera's getting really fuzzy. But I remember he had a whole thing about like he was talking about how like he heard people say, "Oh yeah, that mixed black dude, he ain't gonna win that mixed black dude." And then like I don't remember people were saying anything about him being mixed and him being not black until he got elected, or like I guess going up to it. Didn't know. What do you like really remember?
I
Anybody
mean,
actually?
if this is my perspective. I don't have like a universal perspective on this or like have studied it, but like I remember like Obama generally being perceived as like being black. Like I knew he had like a white mother, but I think like in my mind, at least as a teen, I was like, oh yeah, Obama is like a black man, and I feel like there are lots of things around him that I think like like Fox News would tear him apart. Like he wore like a tan suit once, and it was like I don't know, he was like styling or something, and like
Yeah.
Fox News tore him apart. Or like he had a bunch of rappers over at the White House once, and like there's all this like it's like oh Obama with his hip hop basketball cookout. Like I don't know, like I definitely feel like there are so many associations with Obama around blackness. But then like as I think more as when I started thinking more critically about it, I'm like Obama. I was gonna say black people can't grow up in Hawaii. He grew up in Hawaii mainly with his white side of the family, from my understanding, like with his white mother and his white grandparents. And Obama talks a lot about how when he was campaigning, he's like, yeah, I always felt really comfortable around like these rural white people. Like I would have conversations with people in Ohio, and like it would go pretty well. Like those are like folks I'm comfortable around. And that's not to say that like I don't Obama is a multiracial man, but I actually think like he got ascribed a lot of blackness. But I'm like when you look at it, Obama like I think associates a decent amount with whiteness in different ways, or at least through his actions. Yeah, so I think that's interesting, and I think it's an interesting contrast to Kamala Harris because it's like Kamala, like I know she's from Oakland, lived in Canada and everything, but like people test her blackness, but I'm like, like she went to HBCU, like she went to Howard. I'm not sure if she was in Divine Nine, but like it's really interesting how I feel like people apply a test to Kamala in a way.
I wanted to say a bit about that. The reason why like this is even on the docket or the like what we're talking about today was because like this has to do with like racial identity, of course, but then also just I remember just having an argument with my dad like last week about Kamala Harris. Like it's the same argument every time, just like whether or not she's black, and like it's very frustrating because it's just like my dad who's mixed and then it's me who's mixed. And we're deciding whether or not this person is black because she grew up where she grew up, and it's just like I mean, it's like a weird conversation to have. It's just like, how do we define blackness? And he said it's about culture. And I'm just like, okay. Do you know what? I asked my dad. I was just like, do you know what university she went to? She went to Berkeley, right? I was like, no. Also, there's a lot of black people that go to Berkeley. I mean, there's not a lot of black people that go to Berkeley. There's black people that go to Berkeley, though. But I was just like, no, she went to Howard, right? So I was just like, he was like, oh, well, I was like, who goes to Howard, Dad? And I was just like, black people like you. I was just like, yeah, stupid. So I was just like, I even had to ask him. I was like, okay, so you're mixed and black. Who decides whether or not you're black? Like, he's just like, oh, it's not about how I'm perceived, right? And I was like, yes, Dad, but it's also about how you identify and how how you individually want to be. I mean, how you actually like what you claim. It's like I mean I know we talk about identity politics a lot, where it's just like, there's the societal aspect, but like a big part of it is the individual aspect. I mean, like, it's even a part about me being non-binary. It's me just like, I know, well, I don't look like it, right? Because I look like a guy. I don't look androgynous, but it's just like if I say it, I am. That's kind of how it goes into it. But like, Kamala Harris is black. Like, I don't know why. There's the hoteps and the weird people on YouTube that my dad listens to, and they're all just like, oh yeah, she's not black because of X, Y, and Z. And then you look at X, Y, and Z, and you're like, it's not good. Like, you can be black in where she grew up in Canada, Toronto. I don't know. You can be black there. Like, I don't see why. Like, I was like, what is I asked my dad, I was like, what's this like typical black upbringing that she needs to fulfill those boxes? And a lot of them, my dad's argument is just like, oh well, she only claimed to be black for the election. She just did it just so she can get more votes and more black people votes. I was like, sure, but it's just like you haven't heard her say in her life she's not black her entire life. Like, she didn't go around saying, I ain't black, I'm Asian. Like, she didn't go around doing that for her entire life. So it's just like, what's it's so weird. I mean, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on just Kamala Harris and her blackness, I guess.
I feel like it just comes from a lot of fear of, like Black people selling us out, and like just Kamala's history of being a DA and like putting a lot of like Black people into prison. And so I feel like a lot of that stems from that fear. But it is interesting that we do see a lot more attacks on just like her racial identity, which I feel like at the end of the day, it's kind of like, let's look at policy, like let's just see like what she does before even caring about what she is. But I do think that like a lot of Black people are fearful. I mean, like you could take like Condoleezza Rice, for example, who's like kind of on a pedestal of being like this Black woman in such like a high position, but then like her policies really like hurt the Black community. And so I think there's just a lot of like fear based, but then I think there are a lot of like gender politics coming into play. And like, I think Black women do have like a harder time in terms of like fitting in to their like racial identities more than Black men.
It's so strange to think about. Like, I'm thinking, I haven't thought about Condoleezza Rice in like years. He brought that up. I was like, oh yeah, that was the other Black like politician that we like, Black woman politician we talked about. But it was just like, and then I don't know, maybe do we feel like talking about Candace Owens though? Like, she's not mixed at all. She's just a Black woman. But like, there's attacks on her and her Blackness, right? And we're talking about like where they stand politically and like who they are and how much like I don't know, but I feel like that's important because like no one attacks her, but everybody attacks Kamala Harris. I don't know.
I definitely wanted to surface that because I think I had an evolution on this. I actually I remember going before I took this course, like I was like, yeah, if you like are a certain type of Black person and you support certain policies, like I don't think you're Black. And like I don't know, different people have different beliefs. I think it's important to like Mika said, focus on the policy. Like identity is one thing, but the most important thing is the policy, because someone could be selling you a hope and a dream, but like they're actually like not great. So that's important, but identity is important too. And I was going to say is like, after I took this class called Black Political Thought when I was in college, and it was really good. Like the professor, she challenged us and she made me think. She's like, okay, so Clarence Thomas, he's a Black Supreme Court justice. He's super conservative, like not great, but it's like, is he Black? Or like, is Candace Owens Black? And whoever. And like where I've evolved to, I'm like, everyone, like if you're Black and like you claim a Black identity, like that's you. Like I don't care, like regardless of what your political beliefs are, everything you do is Blackness. And like Black conservatism is a very real movement. It's a very big part of the community and has to be acknowledged and talked about. And it's important. So like that's where I stand, Jazz. Like, yeah, Candace Owens is Black. It's part of it. I don't agree with her politics at all. I think they're despicable, but well, Candace Owens in particular, because she's just a grifter. I don't think she actually believes what she says.
Oh, yeah.
Like Clarence Thomas does, but Candace Owens is like a grifter. But yeah, so all that is to say, and I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts too. But like, where does that kind of line, like, where does the gatekeeping line be drawn? Like, I heard something recently, like, and he's not black, but like, people are like, this is why we need to gatekeep y'all, because like Little Pump went at a Donald Trump rally, and he was like, yeah, Donald Trump, make America great again. It's like, this is why I need to gatekeep the culture, y'all. Like, we can't be letting these outsiders in because they can do dumb shit like this. And also, last thing, Donald Trump, like, he didn't say Little Pump correctly. He's like, yeah, I got a rapper here. He's great. Lil Pimp, come out. It was like really funny layers. But yeah, we'll definitely love to hear, like, where do y'all think we draw the line, and how do we get?
I think that I agree with you, Denzel. I think that like the buffoons in our community, you know, like their buffoonery is stemmed from their experience of blackness. And like, you know, it's literally a dog eat dog world in America. And it's been like that since our ancestors came here, because, you know, we were basically put on, like, forced to be on survival mode. So, you know, that kind of past, like, that's, and it's still going on today. So there's so many Black folks that are just talking craziness, you know, and just are just super anti-Black in response to their experience. And but I do see that when it's a woman, a lot of times they're just like, oh, they're not Black, you know, like it's so quick, versus when it's a guy like Herman Cain or what's the other one, the one who just passed away, you know, like they're not seen as like, oh, he's white, like, or he's not Black, you know, they're just, it's like, oh, he's just like a lost one, like we lost him kind of language. And yeah, but I think that with gatekeeping, it's so important. And I mean, it's so important to, like, because with cultural appropriation of Black culture, like what we were saying earlier, how we literally built this country's culture. Without Black people, like, America would have no culture. We'd be like England, like just plain boring. And so I think that like when we're constantly, our efforts to build the culture and to survive cultural death that and social death that has been happening since our ancestors like were like forced in this country to work. I think that just letting anyone in and just letting anyone just take our culture without giving us any credit, and then we're seen as like, you know, just we're at the bottom of the totem pole as Black people in America and in like the world. It's like a survival, like cultural genocide. That shit is so real. And um yeah, so I can't be mad as a mixed person when people are like, oh, you know, trying to gatekeep Blackness, especially like from me as a mixed person, because it's like, I know personally, I'm like, I'm with y'all. You know, my ancestors also went through it, like, you know, I'm still going through ancestral trauma and trying to deal with that too, but also with the privileges of being mixed as well. And so yeah, like the art of like of being part of this space, embracing that space, and also giving room for folks who are, you know, fully Black and have the full Black experience. That's just like so fucked up, you know.
You got something
Yeah.
to say, Denzel? Or?
No, actually, go ahead, Jazz, because
Oh, well, I was actually waiting on you. I also want to clarify again. I feel like I have to say this. I didn't say it before. I am not a Kamala Harris stan. I'm just not. I'm looking at you, viewer and listener. I'm not. But she's Black. Um, I just wish people attacked her more for her policies, more than whether or not she's Black. I just don't see why that's half the thing. Maybe it's because I'm mixed and I feel pretty hurt about that because that's how I sort of grew up, and you know, people attacking my Blackness a lot. But like, um, I guess that's really all I had about that. I just want to clarify that and also say things about Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think because we want to be like mindful of time this time, or like compared to our first episode, like I feel like we're kind of drawing near an endpoint, and I feel like we've gone through a lot. But I don't know if there are any closing thoughts or anything anyone felt like we didn't touch on that we really should have gotten to. But I think this has been like a really rich discussion.
Closing thoughts.
I
I
think
think we.
that
Oh, go ahead.
oh,
Go ahead.
like, well, I think the theme is that, Black is what Black is so diverse and so, what's the word? Bountiful and abundant. Like, Blackness is so abundant. And I think that has been my theme this year personally. Like, I am abundant. My Blackness is abundant. Our community is abundant, and being around Black people is just so abundant. And so, yeah, this conversation has been really nourishing for me too. Just like being in the presence of y'all, and Blackness is just beautiful. And I'm just like, just being able to talk about my own experience helps me to be more just like self-loving, and to just really, I'm just really proud of being who I am. Yeah.
That was beautiful, Camille. That was a great way to like put a bow on the thoughts like that, like 100%. Like there's just so many different expressions of Blackness, and I think I'm here for it, like in all ways, like Black people who make anime or like Afrofuturism and like music, movie. Like there's just so much. Like there's so many ways in which it can be expressed and can be really awesome.
So is that a good place to end it here, I guess, for this week or this podcast? I don't have any other closing thoughts.
I feel like I can't. Yeah, I don't know if I can really top that. Like that was.
Yeah, that was a pretty good way to end it. I could probably just cut it there and then add a like audio track where it's just, I don't know, something. But
yeah,
I guess
I have to say again, thank you so much, Meek and Camille. Like I like when I was like reach out, I'm like, I'm not sure if they're gonna say yes, but like it would be great to have them on. So like this is really successful for our first.
I'll say
guest.
he's when we were talking about this, like we were just potential episodes, like he thought of you guys immediately. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm glad it like worked out, honestly. This is really happy about this.
No, I appreciate y'all, because I think like Camila and I think this is like where our Japanese side comes in, where we're always been taught like don't take up too much space, don't take too much space. But then like as we've gotten older, it's like it's so important to have these discussions because it counters all the Black stereotypes that are out there. And so yeah, no, I really appreciate y'all for having this space and this podcast, and to have room to have really like honest conversations and to go against the grain.
Yeah, like I just appreciate y'all, and really great meeting you, Jazz. Like you're so dope, and your like storytelling is just so relatable, and it just helped to to make my experience tangible, because it's like a lot goes on here, and then I start feeling crazy, and then when someone else says something that I'm like, oh, I feel
Definitely.
that, it's like, whew, and like Denzel, it's just like really good seeing you too. Like just I remember you from freshman year, just like doing things. So I feel really honored that you even thought of us to like be in your presence of this like amazing show. So yeah, I love
Absolutely.
y'all.
I think I still remember meeting you at the first BSA barbecue I went to at Poly, like
Oh
August 2013.
Oxy, a mess on my end. We're great. But yeah.
All right, I think that's a good place to end it. And thank you everybody that was watching. And I'm not gonna. You see on the screen where to follow people and stuff. And you guys want to shout out like where to follow you guys if you want to do that. Mine's Jax84 on Twitter, JAXZZ84 on Twitter. Denzel Skimwa _ Achebe95. You guys want to read out yours? Like we're.
My Instagram is Mika Cribbs, MIKACRIBBS.
And yeah, my Instagram is Cami Cribbs, CAMIICRIBBS, and then Twitter is Killa Cami, which is KILLACAMII. I'm more active on Twitter than Instagram.
But yeah, thanks for listening, and see y'all next time.